Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined today by Mr. Nathaniel Robinson, who is the founder and CEO at a company called Trustworthy. How are you today, Nathaniel?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Good, and thank you so much for joining us today. Nathaniel, before we begin, if you could tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about Trustworthy and your role within the company.
Sure. I'm one of the co-founders at Trustworthy and I'm the CEO. And Trustworthy is what we call the family operating system. We help families protect, organize, and optimize their important family information so that they have it all in one place, secure and available when they need it, and shared with the folks in what we call the trust graph, the folks who need to have access to that information now or at a later time.
Okay, wow. So just hearing that, a lot of responsibility then when it comes to important family documents. How did this come about? How was Trustworthy born?
Yeah, it's a good question. We were really looking at our own family needs and sort of more broadly the needs of families as a customer. People tend to sort of typically think as consumers as a customer or maybe enterprises as a customer. And very few people had considered the needs of families as a customer, sort of an entity, if you like. So we were really interested in that concept and what do families need? What are they looking for? What are our own families having trouble doing? And really found this opportunity in the family information management space, where we talked to lots and lots of families in our research and found that none of them had good solutions, but they'd all tried to build something to manage this problem, which was their important family information was in lots of different places, lots of different silos. And we heard this phrase, it's all over the place. Even from very, very organized people. So examples might be, some government sites have bits of my information. My employer has some of my information. I keep some information in a spreadsheet or a password manager. Or my employer has, little bits of information that's really important for me and my family. And just lots and lots of silos and no way to sort of gather it all in a cohesive way. In the same way that you might have gathered your financial information in PFM, a personal financial manager, or created a net worth statement in something like mint.com just for finances. There was no way to do that beyond finances across insurances and property and operational instructions and even what we call emotional assets, things that your family, wants to pass on or share. Stories, recipes, traditions, things that you want to keep for your family. Across that umbrella of all the information from the certainly financial, operational, and emotional, there was nothing that really made that easy. And two big use cases emerged. One was people who had sort of built systems. And we've seen people build all kinds of systems to address this problem, what we call a DIY, version of Trustworthy, the family operating system. They were using analog tools, right, like pen and paper or a notebook or folder full of stuff. And then they'd use sort of every variety of digital tool at hand to cobble together their own version of this. So we saw people use the Notes app on their phone, the Photos app on their phone, of course, Excel, other popular Word, to build. You would even see people use things like Trello, to sort of build a version of this for themselves and condense all this information and put an umbrella around it and keep it available. So we're really inspired by some of the systems that people built, but we just felt like, look, you shouldn't have to build this yourself from scratch. You shouldn't have to maintain it yourself. Some of those off-the-shelf tools obviously weren't purpose-built to solve this problem and didn't really deal with the nuances of this. One big one was, hey, look, how do I manage the temporality? Meaning I want you to know where the information lives. If you're, say, a family member or a friend or a trusted professional, but I don't necessarily need you to have access to it today. And this is where we get back to the use cases. So the big use cases were, I want agency and utility and access to my information wherever I am, whenever I need it, when I'm trying to solve a problem, when I need to find my spouse's social security number, or I need to find the VIN number for the car, or I'm looking to do something for my children and I need their information. And I just want to get that information to where it's going. I don't want to have to wait because it's at home in the filing cabinet. How do I get this done right now? So big use case around sort of agency and what we now call sovereign identity. And then the second big part was pretty obvious. If I get hit by a bus, will my family and loved ones know where to go to find all the assets and all the information and how things happen? So those are the two big things that emerged. And so we really built a system around all this research and said, look, let's solve for the problems that off-the-shelf tools don't solve for. Let's make sure that we have these two big use cases covered. And really and we ended up giving it a name because no one really had a name. So we called it the Family Operating System, which is a name that lots of people said to us, yeah, that feels like what I built. But obviously you're going to be able to build a better version because that's your job. And I should be able to get further, faster using your system and have more utility out of it than I'll ever get out of my paper-based or even digital system. So that's what we're really trying to do, is just help families, raise the level of security around their information with a really robust platform, help them share it with their loved ones and collaborate with the folks that they probably already collaborate. This is where we get into this notion of what we call the trust graph. So who do you trust with a little bit of your information and when? So like your inner circle, your partner, your spouse, your friends and family, your trustees and guardians, if you have kids, and then sort of outwardly to this set of professionals that you might work with. So an accountant, a wealth advisor, an estate planning attorney, maybe a realtor or an insurance broker. And we've seen all kinds of folks get added across the trust graph, from nannies and babysitters to business managers if you have a business, or even agents in the entertainment and sports industries who have a lot of involvement in their clients' lives. So it's a little bit unique in terms of what we built, but we really built it based on the fact that there really wasn't anything for families to do this. And it's surprising because we're in the information age. The amount of information that we all have to manage and deal with is only going up. It's only increasing, right? Especially now with sort of AI and generative content, it's just going to go insane. And so how do you grok all of that? How do you deal with all of the information across your life and all the related critical things that you have to do around managing your house and managing that information? So that's really what we're building, is how do we help families be more efficient, be more organized, be more prepared, and not have to build their own family operating system from scratch and maintain it over time. And the real benefit really is when you adopt Trustworthy, not only are you getting everyone asks about security. That's probably going to be a question that you would have. And the funny thing is, what most people are doing today is pretty insecure. Like, we've been shocked at what we learned about how people manage information today and how trusting they are. And so by adopting Trustworthy, you get a huge increment in family information security, just because of some basic things that we do. Like, you can't create an account without a robust password. You have to have two-factor authentication. It's not an option for us. Of course, we encrypt everything. We comply with all the standards like SOC 2 and SOC 3 and HIPAA and GDPR, even though we're just a US-based company. We really adhere to the highest standards and spend a lot of time and effort on building a very robust and secure platform for this information for obvious reasons. It's a big fundamental part of what we're building. So by adopting Trustworthy, most families get a huge increment in a step up in security compared to what they're doing today. They then can share it with their loved ones and trusted professionals and give them access. But the aspiration is, once you give us information, we want to give you a return on that information. We don't want to just store it for you and let you have access and utility from it. We want to give you a better version of your operating system, which is where we get into the optimize. So once you begin using Trustworthy, we can start to see the things that you have and don't have, and can make recommendations to fill in the blanks, and make your system better over time. And that's really the main value that we want to add, is sort of giving you superpowers around your information, giving you a better version of your operating system, help you improve it over time, filling in the blanks. And then, of course, looking at the things that you have and saying, hey, how could we make this version better? Really having software look at the things you have and saying, hey, it looks like maybe your mortgage rate is too high. We could get you a better mortgage rate and save you thousands of dollars. Or it looks like you maybe don't have enough life insurance for this part of your life. How do we optimize that part? So, obviously not all financial, but there's a whole set of value around optimizing your system and making it better over time, that we're now venturing into to help families, just be more efficient in running their lives.
It sounds terrific, like a one-stop shop for all the important things that, as you said in the beginning, it sounded like you were describing me bits of paper lying around and things, and to have all of that centralized and have the right people with the right access. It sounds so simple. And like you said, it's surprisingly, no one had done this completely before. So good for you coming up with that and putting it all together. Tell me a bit about the uptake, because I'm already interested, but has there been a good response? Has it been hard to get off the ground, or have things flowed?
I think we've been pretty fortunate, even though we started in building in earnest in 2020, right before the pandemic. I think we thought, it would be much easier to sort of raise money and build a company until that happened. But it turns out that, a pandemic where you have to be at home is a good time to stay home and build some software. And consider the sort of safety needs of families. So in some ways that was perfect context for what we're building. We've raised a good amount of money now from an amazing set of investors. We have thousands of families who are subscribing and using Trustworthy. We're a software as a service business. We've really been astounded at this kind of stories that we get from families and the use cases that they've applied to Trustworthy and how they've helped us build a better system as we consider their needs. So I think it's going well. Anytime you're sort of defining a new category, I think it takes a little longer for people to understand the concept. Like, okay, well, I have my system and it's pretty good, or maybe it's pretty basic. Why would I adopt your system, and why is it better? So I think we're seeing, we're now sort of starting to hit some mainstream and get more attention, I guess you could say. And this is sort of part of the journey of being a startup where, you're looking for ways to go to market. You're looking for ways to, be known and be publicly, have a brand where people understand sort of instantly what you do. But that's just sort of part of the journey that you go on. But we've obviously raised some seed money, raised some Series A money. We're on that trajectory for growth, and we're happy with the progress that we're making, even in a difficult environment right now.
Well, it sounds like it's on the up and up. So congratulations, and I think that's fantastic. Let's take a step back, if you don't mind. Let's talk about the beginnings. Starting out, obviously a lot of challenges for entrepreneurs, building businesses. And could you maybe talk to us a little bit about your personal journey, maybe some growth, some challenges, things that you learned about yourself through this process?
I think there's a truism here to startups that you want to pick a problem that makes sense, really, that makes sense for you, and not only that you care about, but that you want to solve for. I think in many ways, it makes sense to be selfish, right? Right. That we sort of set out to say, well, what do our families need? And then we started talking to peers, and then we started, talking to their peers, and sort of going out and out to learn more about family needs and what they were struggling with. But it still came back to our own families, and so that selfishness was like, well, what do our families need in a modern age to be prepared and organized and efficient in the way that we run? Save time, save money, have peace of mind is really what we're providing. So I think what I'm trying to say is, pick a problem that makes sense to you, that you actually kind of benefit from yourself, because you're probably going to be working on it for a good number of years as an entrepreneur. And so you have to have that to sustain. I care about this problem. I want to solve this problem, not just for my family, but for lots of families. And having that sort of connective tissue, I suppose. I'm in a position now with my family where we've wholly adopted Trustworthy as our system of record, and it would be uncomfortable to switch off of it, right? That we have to build something to do all the things that Trustworthy does for us as a family. So we want, obviously, as an entrepreneur, you want customers who feel the same way, right? Who are like, yeah, I don't want this thing to go away, and I'm prepared to pay for it to keep it. Every startup wants that. So, we've been working on this since sort of 2019. We're a few years in. I can imagine us working on this for the rest of my life, basically. That this is a great problem to solve for, and it feels really good to help families, right? And I've learned so much in the last few years, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot more. So that's what I'm saying is, you want to have this sort of connective tissue around the problem that you're solving. You care about it. You're going to benefit from it personally. And you see the benefit to other people in the world, right? That you get that feedback. That's incredibly rewarding as an entrepreneur. But you kind of have to have all of that to sustain your journey, because it can be a long journey, and there's definitely ups and downs along the way. Not every day or every week is a great week. Sometimes you get a string of those. Sometimes you have a string of bad weeks, like where you're just dealing with operational issues and things about running a business that you have to do, but not the reason that you got into building that business in the first place. And that's even in a world where you're not constantly, like Uber, for example, constantly battling with towns and cities and legal battles all the time. We don't have those kinds of things, but if you did, it's even harder to sustain, right? You really have to believe that your way is better, and that you're doing good for the world. With us, it's easy, right? We're helping families be better organized, have more agency from their information, have utility, have peace of mind. That's really what every family wants, right? So it's relatively easy to keep going for us, and we get lots of great signals back from our members and prospects about how we can improve it for them. So, I think that's the other thing is, it can be frustrating, right? You're like, I want to do everything right now, but you're always going to have a limited set of resources. So how do you choose to do the right things for the company, for the audience, for yourselves? That sort of gratification for yourselves as well. That's always an interesting balance. So, there's lots of challenges as an entrepreneur. I've learned a lot. I've learned so much about the space. I've met so many great people. The upside is, you get very invested in the space. You learn a lot about it. So that's rewarding. You meet amazing people who help you along the way, people who want you to succeed and say, yes, this should exist in the world. What you're doing is good. And certainly you get signals about things that you shouldn't be doing either, which is always helpful. So, the whole thing, and this has been true across most of my, all my startup experience. And I'm a little bit of an enigma, because I'm not only a startup guy. I had a whole niche career working at Oracle Corporation for about 13 years. Still kind of in the information management space, obviously. So there's a common thread there for me, but and it was really enterprise business, completely different. And then after sort of 13 years at Oracle, deciding I wanted to do something much earlier stage, much more entrepreneurial, and have done, startups, 5 or 6 startups since that time.
Before the startups, was this something that was brewing inside you, or was it you woke up one day and you went, right, I'm going to take a new direction? Was it, did you nurture this, or was it born relatively quickly?
In some ways, I feel like it's a curse where my brain was always saying, "Hey, this, how do we make that thing better? Could technology be applied there to make that better, or cheaper, or faster, or more rewarding, or something?" So I always had lots of ideas about building apps, or building services, or about building websites, or really, because of my technology background and training, how do I apply technology to a problem to try and solve it? So even, in my job, selling and marketing enterprise software, it's kind of, you have domain, you have license to do that inside the functions that you manage at a company. It's like, hey, let's improve this. Let's be more efficient. That's always good for a business. I think partly because, a whole bunch of my time was in Silicon Valley. I started in New Zealand. I started working for Oracle Corporation in New Zealand, where I'm from, and then moved to headquarters, but so a bunch of my career was in Silicon Valley and Redwood Shores in California. And you're just surrounded by the hubbub of the valley, right? So you hear about all these entrepreneurial journeys. It seems alluring. And, having that sort of DNA, I suppose, to be like technology solving problems, you wonder like, oh, could this idea that we had be a company? We had a friend of mine and I had an idea that was called Lip Sync Idol. We actually built a prototype, and this was like early 90s. And our idea was to have people lip sync over songs and perform. And this was way ahead of its time. And I wish we'd sustained it. It was actually a good example of a good idea that was before its time, right? Before the technology was really available. It was before YouTube. But American Idol was huge, right? And the first few seasons, and we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if more people could get involved in this? And so we built the prototype, kind of, didn't go anywhere. And we're like, okay, well, that's never going to work. And then shortly after, YouTube came along, and then of course, everyone lip syncing over videos is sort of TikTok these days. But
you see,
just one of those ideas that seemed good. Probably was good if we, yeah, right. In TV shows, yeah, exactly. And so, I'd like to say we had some claim to fame, but we have none, right? That we actually did it and built it, but we didn't keep going. And it's arguably we probably couldn't have kept going for a decade or so. Who knows? But anyway, one of those sort of things that we're like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. Let's build something. And mobile technology wasn't quite there yet to sort of enable it. And really interesting. Having that DNA sort of forced me into this position of like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable. Plus, I'd sort of gotten to the level that I wanted to get at on the corporate ladder, and I wasn't really sure where I was going to go next. And I'd also become a manager and was more managing people than doing the work, and I missed the work. And so the next step, I quit my job, great job, really good job, and ended up working at a very early stage startup that had just raised a very small amount of seed funding. It was called Slide Rocket. And it was me and the co-founder and one other engineer working in his garage in the winter in San Francisco. Yeah. And that was really my first startup experience. And I will say I had no idea what I was getting into at the time. But it was all the things I was looking for. And it was a complete roller coaster. And for better or for worse, we ended up selling the company a few years later after raising some more money. And, I had this amazing startup experience. Not all of it good, not all pleasant, but fortunately with a good outcome, which is, still unusual for lots of startups. Lots of startups don't have a successful outcome. So I don't regret anything about, making that change. But in many ways got lucky with that first company. And it was a really cool company. We were going up against Microsoft and PowerPoint, building an online version of, how to build slides in a browser. which was kind of a new concept and ahead of its time. And, it was exactly the thing that I wanted to be working on. It was amazing technology. It was helping people do a better job of building slides and telling stories. And got acquired by a big enterprise company because they wanted to go and compete with Microsoft. And then kind of all folded, and I didn't want to go back to another enterprise company. So I just continued on my startup journey and have had unbelievable experiences that I just would never have had if I'd stayed at that original job.
That's pretty cool. Nathaniel, I've got two more for you. The first one, is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers and our listeners that I may have missed, something that's important, maybe where they can find the company and which kind of people can utilize your product?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're easy to find on the web. Just go to trustworthy.com and you can start a free trial, 14-day free trial of Trustworthy and see if it's a good fit for your family. Let us know if you have any questions. We're here to help. Yeah. What was the other part of that question?
There's a second question. So I thought that I heard something, and you gave it away through this interview. You said that you were originally from New Zealand.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was born in New Zealand. Yeah. Is there another part to that question, or you just want to?
Oh, yes. Do you know what's happening on Saturday?
I imagine something to do with rugby.
Oh, yes. We're in the finals together, Nathaniel. So, if we're going to be mates, we've only got Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday left to be friends, because on Saturday, it's the finals of the Rugby World Cup, and it's us again.
Yeah, it's me versus you. I understand fully as a Kiwi that, depending on the outcome, well, I guess regardless of the outcome, unless it's a draw, we won't be able to be friends anymore.
That's it. Nathaniel, I just want to say thanks. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and you've shared some good information with us. And I'm pretty sure that our viewers and our listeners will be able to take parts out and find the inspiration they need to get out there and get themselves going. So thank you.
I hope so too. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate the time. Great to meet you.